Hello, welcome to the Josh Volinski Show. If you've ever listened to CUNY Admission Deferred, you know that one of my jobs was to be in the City University for 50 years. I didn't say 15 years, I said 50 years. But also, when I went to City College, my professor was Professor Alston, Charles Alston, the famous African artist, and he was my mentor. And Charles Alston was a very famous African-American artist. I think if you go to He-Man Books, you will see a new book on him this very day. So Charles Alston, being a black professor, every day he would go to City College, and a lot of people he would meet would ask him, "Where do you work?" He would say, "City College." And the first thing they would say to him is, "Well, how many years have you been in the boiler room?" They didn't even suspect that he was a full professor of art at the City College of New York. Later on, my supervisor at the Finley Center, Billy Joe Billups, hired me to teach art in the Finley Student Center, in the Arts and Crafts Center. And she got permission to hire me from her supervisor, Dr. James Smalls, who was assistant director of the Finley Student Center. And I was hired, and I did that job for 10 years. So I have a very rich career in the village of Harlem, and I love Harlem. And I walked around Harlem from corner to corner in years where you never even saw a Caucasian person walking through Harlem. I remember walking into a grocery store on Sunday, and the first thing that the grocer said to me was, because I was a young stud in those days, he looked at me and said, "I'll pay up, mister, I'll pay up." He mistook me as a mafioso coming to collect, their share of the profits. So I have a very rich history in Harlem, and I used to spend hours in that wonderful bookstore. I remember that slogan out on a sign, about 60 million black people, and the trials and tribulations they're going through on the planet Earth, and perhaps throughout the universe. So I've really touched upon the educational system, and I've been ashamed of it. And I hope, as they hire more and more people like my friend Jonathon Rubin and Tasha Prosper, that we can start moving ahead. And what suggestions do you have on moving ahead, Tasha?
Moving ahead, I think in terms of the education system, at least the higher education system, we need faculty of color from all backgrounds who respect themselves and respect the communities that they come from. We need professors of color that love people of color. And that's radical, because what we have nowadays is, the best, the talented 10th bourgeois conceptualization that if you are of color and you do rise, it is because you're so exceptional, and it's you and only you who should be granted the privilege of access to the higher levels of education. And what we need to do is to smash all of that nonsense and to hire people of color that love themselves as a person of color and that love to work with people of color, and who love all people, of course, but especially so to the community that they represent, so that they could raise up new students They could help them to rise and to become new leaders and spread more self-love. Because a lot of times what happens, what I see, is that there's a distancing, a social distancing that occurs. Being in a majority white institution or a European American dominated institution, for that scholar of color, okay, they have hurdles to jump. And it might be easier to sort of just go with the flow of your majority peers, the other professors and power holders at your university system, than to stand up and to say, you know, this is what I feel, my opinion matters, it should be counted, and stand up for the students and stand up for people of color and inclusion. So the numbers are against some of these professors of color who are, you know, trying to get their tenure, and, you know, they can't be too radical because, you know, they'll be shut down. But if en masse we just get a bunch of people of color who really have dedication to the communities that they come from, that aren't playing the politics game, that aren't playing the you know, bow to white privilege game, then we might have some hope, because they can hold the torch to light the way for the future. And they have to want to groom people, groom the students at City College, groom the students at whatever university, at CUNY, within the CUNY system. They have to be willing to work hard, to roll up their sleeves, to do the work, to undo the education system knowledge base that some of these high schools are coming in with, to undo that, to put in the Hubert Harrison and all the folks that we've spoken about many times, to put in the knowledge of all of the ancestors and all the work that they've done to re-educate the miseducated youth. And it's hard work. It's not glamorous. But a lot of the people I see, they want, you know, let's get that tenure at Yale, let's get that tenure at Columbia. I want to go to teach, you know, the best and the brightest, you know, and they don't make the connection that that's not necessarily how they came to that place, right? So you have the people like Clarence Thomas, who are like, oh no, affirmative action, and it's horrible. And he got his education through such measures, but then turned around and kicked the ladder down and said no one else shall rise to this level of education. And he went on to speak horribly about how he was treated due to you know, being let in based on race and this and that. What we need is people to understand that we are human beings. We have a unique moment in time where people are frustrated. The capitalist system is collapsing. We're seeing that these people are greedy. They don't deserve what they've gotten. And instead of turning that hatred onto people who are on welfare or people who are poor, you know, people always like to say, well, they're lazy. They don't want to work. Look to Wall Street. Are they very hard workers? Are they get-overs? You know, what is it, you know, that makes us want to hate one group and to edify another? So when we think about the education system, it's also a societal thing, because how we lead in education, how we come together as students and active students and engage for policy reform, is how the message will, the vibrations go out to society, that they can also come together and activate towards change. And so we have a great responsibility within the education system to really inform the youth about what the true meaning of freedom is. And education is a way that we can have mass bodies of people together all across the nation to really advocate for true freedom. And right now, what we're being sold is not real freedom. And I don't care what color you are, because even if you're white and wealthy and you're making your money on Wall Street or with corporate America, you're not truly free. You can say, oh, well, this money, feels good. I feel free. I could do what I want with this money. But as a human being, when you have to lock your doors at night and look over your shoulder at everybody else and live psychologically in a state where people are going to try to take what you have, and live in a psychological state that you have to keep that wealth by any means necessary, like a Bernie Madoff, it's not true freedom. So we really have to foster a shift so that our society can grow and become a great nation, because when you include all of the learning styles, all of the artistic intelligence that we possess here in America due to the immigration of people from all over, we are at an extreme advantage. In a homogenous place, they only have, just what their limited exposure to the world is. We have access to people from all over. We have people with so much depth and knowledge culturally that if we could just, accept them, help them to grow, foster them to become great, our nation is greater, therefore. Mm-hmm. And right now it's about snuffing them out and putting them aside so that they can be laborers and, not think too much so that the people who have power can maintain power. But, with that power, there's no freedom. There's no freedom to just truly...
Yeah, I wanted to ask Jonathon, mm-hmm. because you touched upon something. You touched upon these professors and you said they're afraid to be too radical. And perhaps that's a description of even our president, Obama. He may be too fearful to be too radical. Jonathon, you've been active in the various clubs with many of the politicians who support Manhattan Neighborhood Network, like Gail Brewer and Scott Stringer and Linda Rosenthal. How radical do you think they can be, and how much of a change can they facilitate?
Well, that's touched upon something that I think is the heart of American politics today, that most people, if you ask them, they thought they voted for President Obama, the man who was going to bring change that they wanted. Now, I'm not criticizing President Obama. It's a very tough job to do it right. But unfortunately, many of the people who voted for President Obama felt he was going to shape their lives and change it and dislodge the power structures that exist today, whether it be Wall Street, the military. They talked about cutting the budget in the last 2 weeks. A guy named Congressman Ryan, he talked about cutting social programs. He talked about waste. There was no discussion of military waste. There was no discussion of the fact that the millionaires and the super elite, who were described by Bob Herbert as controlling the society's wealth, basically, they don't pay very large taxes. As a matter of fact, 4% of the people in this country control 63% of the wealth. 80% of the people in this country live on 15% of the wealth. Is that a democracy? And I agree with Tasha Prosper that also freedom is important, real freedom. And there are two people, well, there's one professor that I'd like to mention on the show, Cornel West, who wrote a book, Race Matters. It's not just for the black community. It talks about psychological and sociological issues that are important for all of us. It says that structure of a life is important, that oftentimes the youth in the inner city and in the ghettos of America come home from school and their structure is not good. It might be illicit, it might be sports, but it's not empowering them. And one of the things, not for charter schools, not for Jeffrey Canada's schools, but one of the things that worked in this book where a man named Reginald Clark wrote about the Chicago school system is he said mentoring and community involvement and doing those after school was important for the people who are not self-motivated necessarily. You don't have to be from a two-parent-headed household to succeed, but you might need a mentor or a community person to care about you. And I think that that's what hasn't been done in education enough, is to break the cycle of fragmentation and destruction for many people, and substance abuse, which goes on all across America, even in the lily white super elite institutions, as well as the regular community institutions. There are substance problems. As a matter of fact, binge drinking was discussed in the last 10 years as killing people. Lack of control of alcohol was enough to kill people. But I think freedom is the issue. I think freedom to basically say, you know, okay, we accept the fact that elite communities with their local property taxes want the best education for their youth and their children, but we also have to say, if you're a school in America, there are standards you have to meet. You can get maybe more funding from the government, but you have to meet standards. The standards are the teachers' and principals' responsibility, but they're also the students' and the parents' responsibility. So to some extent, I think that the concept of social promotion, which has been around for many, many years, is not a good concept either. I think that, you know, sure, more democratic public schools is very important. More equally funded public schools. Funding not based on communities' ethnicity, but funding based on American citizenship. In other words, an American should have a certain type of education to go beyond high school. Not that an American might not need assistance, but that the standardization and the funding may be more equitable. But as Bill Cosby said, it's not about the money as many people think it is. It's about a lot of personal responsibility, parental responsibility, mentor responsibility, teacher responsibility, and principal responsibility. Because if you must know, a lot of the funding in New York City, the stronger union by far is not the teachers' union, it's the custodial union. And the custodial union wasted several $100 million in the last 10 years on bottled water for the custodians. How that was helping the education system, I'm really at a loss to say. I mean, sure, clean water is important, absolutely. As an environmentalist, I know that. But I think the custodial union shouldn't be the structure that breaks the funding problem in education. It should be that teachers should be merited and respected for what they do. I have a wife who's a teacher right now. She teaches 3 classes part-time in a parochial school. But she's a different type of person than many conceptions of a teacher. She comes home at about 7 o'clock every night, and she'll work 4 to 5 hours the night before she goes to class. And then in the morning, she'll work another 2 to 3 hours. There is not enough respect for teachers in our society. As a matter of fact, some of the people in the inner city might say, you know what, that custodian, he's making a lot of money. He has all these benefits and perks. Why would I want to go get an education? I can be a custodian. I can do what he can do. I can manage the machines that he manages and things like that. And I'm not saying that everybody shouldn't have a good job and shouldn't have a good dream, but to me, the teachers that I met along the way in my life were very important.
Jonathon, I want to touch upon one very important point because I want to steal some of the thunder from filmmaker Michael Moore and other people. We're in Libya for 2 reasons. We're in Libya because, one, for the oil, a word that Obama neglected to mention, and also we're in there because Gaddafi and the Revolutionary Council took away the largest U.S. base in the Middle East or Africa, overlooking Africa from the United States. And he nationalized it, and he divided it among the people. And that's why we're in Libya. So to borrow a phrase from Michael Moore, and many people have said it in a more eloquent and powerful way, unless you've seen his motion picture, Capitalism, the Love Story, capitalism is a dysfunctional, outdated system serving just a few people. And it is about time that capitalism was taken out. So how, with all we're talking about, how can we take the first steps to effectively remove this scourge of capitalism from the face of the earth?
Well,
Tasha?
oh, sorry.
Okay, that's a big one. But I think what I want to touch upon is that, of course, we will need leaders, not necessarily like Barack Obama, to if we want that true freedom minus this old school capitalistic viewpoint. I mean, this is just ridiculous. You know, I know that there are scholars like Leonard Jeffries who really, you know, I agree with regarding Obama in terms of Obama is a symbol of hope to people of color, to African Americans. That family represents so much beauty and love and just joy. So that as a symbol to the African American communities and to people across the nation, it does serve a purpose. They do serve a purpose. But you know, I just even reduced them to an it. It's, you know, no, you don't say that you're going to be anti-war and anti-this and anti-that, and then get into office and turn your back on the gays and lesbian sisters and brothers, turn your back on the anti-war activists, and start to behave, you know, in a manner that's just unacceptable. So while they represent something that's very positive, I agree psychologically to the psyche of the African American community, we're never going to have that structure that steps away from capitalism with people like Obama perpetuating the status quo of American culture. It just won't happen. Maybe with Cynthia McKinney in charge of things, we might have some type of hope to sort of restructure the broken capitalist system. But until then, it just seems like it's going to implode. It's just going to keep imploding. They're going to keep trying to do the same old thing, and over time, it just collapses among itself because it can't hold itself up on the backs of the working class people for too long, because those people will break, and then that system, you know, will fall onto those broken bodies and those broken spirits, and then there's no place else to go but further down. So my thought is that we will need to have a more radical viewpoint in charge of our higher government systems if we do want to see a true change away from the status quo capitalistic churn out worker bees and churn out drones, executive drones for corporations. There's going to need to be a tremendous shift so that people inside of themselves are proud of that shift. So the shift has to come from the people so that they feel responsible for it, that they feel proud, and that they want to grow. Because if you force the shift onto society, which everyone was so afraid, you know, Obama's going to come in and be this big socialist and change everything radically overnight. That certainly didn't happen.
Tasha, this is one thing you'll never hear a professor say, and you'll never hear this on media. Slavery was a business, and it was very profitable, extremely profitable.
Mental slavery is profitable too.
Yep.
That's why I'm saying that for true revolution, the people mentally have to be free and ready, because if they're just working worker bees at the bottom and they're fine in their ignorant bliss, once that system collapses and their spirits break and they're just broken, and then they mentally have to find a way to move on and to find a way to rise up, that's when you'll see the true revolution, because there will be no other place for them to go but up and to change the whole system.
I'd like Jonathon to finish up. I want to say one thing. This is the Josh Volinski show, and I want Jonathon to have the final words. We are going to put this up on YouTube for posterity. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, and I wanted to say thank you for having me on your show so many times. It's been a real learning experience. I found out about a resident in my community much more than I ever knew. I was unaware of your history to a large extent, your professors, the people you associated with, what Danny Darrow and Arthur English brought up on one of the shows. I was totally unaware of that. But I agree that our society isn't moving forward. It isn't moving forward for the large groups of people. As a matter of fact, just the title of a book that I saw in the bookstore appalled me. It's titled Jim Crow in the Era of Mass Incarceration. And you see, too largely the justice system does not favor the people of color or different ethnicity, number one. Number two, there's a lot, I hope there will be progress made, but there's a lot of crushing of unions in the United States today. And then the final thing is, you see, in my opinion, to progress as a society under the form of mass communication, which is the media and television, people like Josh Volinski or Danny Darrow or Arthur English or even Amy Goodman should be mainstream media. We should not watch the good old white Anglo-Saxon Protestant community to give us the news of all the people.
And that's the same with Nat Wood and the sound gatherers. Well, he has unlimited time, so we go on. Okay. Yeah, well, I think he cut it off, but what I'm saying is both Paula Gloria and Harold Chandler have unlimited time. Like if you and I sign up for YouTube, 10 minutes now.
Okay,
but
okay.
They have the old account.
So they can
I think
play
even,
the full.
Nat Wood probably has the old account. So we'll see where we go next. I'll step to the restroom a minute, yeah.
Okay.
We have more time?
Yeah, we'll see what our director says.
Oh, I have to leave now.
Yeah, I sort of have things to do too.